is fair game for this personal criticism and anger, and that's not what makes our country strong. Well, Valerie Jarrett, of course, is using diplomatic language to the nth degree. I wonder how much longer it'll be that black folk are willing to use diplomatic language. I mean, black folk who have a spotlight like Valerie Jarrett. Barack Obama tweeted out his support of the op-ed that Valerie Jarrett and other black leaders wrote in what the CNN calls a rare response to the rhetoric from the Trump administration. I wouldn't call it rhetoric. It starts with the right letter, but it's not rhetoric, it's racism. Come on, CNN. A rare response to the rhetoric from the Trump administration. When asked about his infrequent responses, Jarrett noted that he, Obama, would, quote, have to speak out every single day, end quote. And she said he's also focused on lifting up the voices of others. Jarrett added this, quote, it's not just enough to hear from President Obama. We need every single American who cares about our country and who is concerned about the direction that we're heading in. We need to let people know that it's necessary to participate and get involved and vote and encourage other people to do so. That's what it means to be part of a democracy. Yeah, it is. Here in Georgia, in a federal court, let me quote you what CNN had on Sunday. In a federal court filing, lawyers representing election integrity and potential manipulation of election results. Stacey Abrams was really elected governor of Georgia, but it was stolen from her because what's our current guy's name, the governor? No. What? Yeah, the shotgun guy, Brian Kemp. That shows you how, in addition, Brian Kemp made sure that close to 600,000 voters were removed from the rolls before the election took place. These are people that had no reason to be removed. But it's the cross-check system that, what's our friend's name who wrote about it? You know, the guy, I can't think tonight. The guy who wrote the books about the vote theft and Greg Palast. Yeah, Jesus. Thank you, Kathy. Greg Palast has written extensively about this and also produced a film about it. Anyway, the brief that lays out the evidence about Georgia election officials, all white people, destroying evidence necessary to prove that they stole the election. It was filed by the Coalition for Good Governance, and the brief argues that state officials, quote, almost immediately began destroying evidence after a 2017 lawsuit alleged Georgia's voting machines were outdated and vulnerable to hacking and manipulation. The lawsuit reads this, too, quote, the evidence strongly suggests that the state's amateurish protection of critical election infrastructure placed Georgia's election system at risk, and the state defendants now appear to be desperate to cover up the effects of their malfeasance to the point of destroying evidence. Now, this has to do with the Russians hacking into various state election centrals. We know it happened. I don't give a fuck what Trump and his dogs howl about. This happened. And Georgia was targeted because it became very clear that Stacey Abrams, a black woman, was going to kick Brian Kemp, a white man's ass, all over the state. And it would have been just too goddamn embarrassing. I mean, this fucking Georgia, man. This is the old South. This is the Confederacy. To have a black woman wind up as governor when it belongs to a white man? Horse shit. Hey, Russians, we need some help. And they got it, thanks to Mitch McConnell. Moscow Mitch made sure that Georgia was one of the targets of the Russian hackers. Georgia's current Secretary of State, and that's what Brian Kemp, who's now the governor, he was Secretary of State when this election took place. He was a candidate for governor, and he was also Secretary of State, which means that as a candidate, he wanted to be elected governor. As Secretary of State, he could manipulate the whole fucking system to make sure he was elected. And he did, with the help of Moscow Mitch and the Russians. I know, I live here. I fucking live here. This is not somewhere else. This is here. Georgia's current Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, denied the accusations in a statement. He pointed to a U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee report, U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee report, which concluded that no machines were manipulated and no votes were changed. Why, did someone say they were? My goodness, that never happened. Raffensperger went on to say this. He's the Georgia Secretary of State. Quote, the office, his office, is also in the process of replacing the state's current voter machines with machines that print a paper ballot for an added layer of security. Those new machines will be in place by the March 24, 2020 presidential preference primary. Well, joy, except the current machines, the ones that, the old Diebold machines that were used in the election of 2000 to make sure that George Bush was given the presidency over Al Gore. Those machines are they're still being used here. Every time I fucking vote, I can't stand it. I don't know why I keep participating in this fraud, this voting fraud, but I do. The current machines are still planned to be used for special and municipal elections this year. So last Thursday's court filing alleges a broad effort from state officials here in Georgia to, quote, intentionally destroy fundamental evidence. The lawsuit went on to say, quote, this type of evidence is not merely relevant and unique, it is fundamental, and it is forever gone. Well, that's the whole idea. After abundant notice of their well-known duty to preserve evidence, the state defended times have black people in this country heard that horse shit. In the internal email obtained by CNN that was sent a couple of days after the incident, TSA's acting deputy administrator, Patricia Cogswell, writes to other high-ranking TSA officials that, quote, given the number of emails and such coming into HQ about the Miami situation, please pull together a message for senior officers to issue and think about other information that should go out to all officers, end quote. They have to think about it. They have to come up with something. Yeah. The emails that are flying back and forth among TSA administrators does not mention the names of the two white devils who were released or put on administrative leave, whatever the hell that is. Oh well. Here's some more. Want some more? Here's some more. Senator Rand Paul, that little shit that was named after Ayn Rand. You remember Ayn Rand? She was this libertarian jack-off who made up all kinds of bullshit in her two novels. Oh, wasn't she a great libertarian? Until it was time for her to collect Social Security and Medicare, which she did willingly and gladly, right? That's socialism. But Rand Paul, like Ayn Rand and like Ron Paul, I mean, all the, and I can name a couple more, these so-called libertarians, they're a bunch of fucking liars. They're all about nobody else gets Social Security, Medicare, food stamps, whatever. But if they need it, well, it's there. I might as well take it. Right? Yeah, when she died, Ayn Rand was receiving Medicare, Medicaid, maybe, I don't know, food stamps, Social Security. Sounds like a communist to me, doesn't it to you? Or freeloader. Or somebody infested with this impossible to deny desire to rip off the American public. That was Ayn Rand, right? Well, Rand Paul says he will be glad, he will be thrilled to offer Representative Ilhan Omar a ticket to visit Somalia, which is fucking where she's from, so that, quote, this is Rand Paul talking, quote, so she might come back and appreciate America more, end quote. You dumb little fucker. That guy that beat the shit out of you, your neighbor that beat the shit out of you, Rand Paul, maybe he had reason, huh? You little twit. His remarks were given during an interview with, no, not Fox News, try again, right, Breitbart News, another fascist little motherfucking agency, Breitbart News. So it constitutes another personal attack on Representative Omar, a Minnesota Democrat, who had to withstand the racist attacks made against her by the filthy president of the United States, who's infested with the poison that's generated in his own schizophrenic mind. He is totally infested with it. Trump can't move without leaving little puddles of infestation droppings behind him everywhere he goes. Ilhan Omar came to the U.S. as a Somalian refugee, became a naturalized U.S. citizen when she was a teenager. Rand Paul said, and he's the other senator from Kentucky, Moscow Mitch being the senior senator. Rand Paul said, quote, and so, while I'm not saying we forcibly send her anywhere, I'm willing to contribute to buy her a ticket to go visit Somalia. And I think she can look and maybe learn a little bit about the disaster that is Somalia, that has no capitalism. It has no God-given rights guaranteed in a constitution and has about 7 different tribes that have been fighting each other for the last 40 years. And then maybe after she's visited Somalia for a while, she might come back and appreciate America more. You rotten little son of a bitch, Rand Paul, you kinky-haired little bastard, you. Ilhan Omar appreciates and understands America to a degree that you never will, you little punk. Your little condescending attitude about, oh, well, let her go visit. She is trying to defend America against fucking fascists like you and your boss in the Senate, Moscow Mitch, and this crazed son of a bitch in the White House, Donald Trump, and you don't understand that, do you, Rand? Huh? You don't get that. She's trying to save America, Rand Paul, and you little curly haired prick, you're trying to destroy it. You and Trump and McConnell and the rest of you swine. So you have the temerity to suggest that Ilhan Omar go back to Somalia, a country that the United States. Rand, did you ever see the movie Black Hawk Down? That was Somalia, you dumb shit. That was Mogadishu, the capital of Somalia. That's right, Moga. Mogadishu, the capital of Somalia, where the United States and our fucked up allies like Saudi Arabia and some of these other crazed bastards have been stirring up and fomenting disaster and chaos in that country for how long now? Rather than Ilhan Omar or you, Rand, because I'm sure you don't know shit about Somalia, but rather than sending Ilhan Omar back to the country that she's very familiar with so she can look around and come back and write a report for you, maybe, so you can give her a grade. What I saw in Somalia, how I spent part of my summer 2019. Is that what you want, you little curly haired asshole, you? That's what you said in your tweets and this bullshit that where you defend this racist pig in the White House. I wonder, Rand, it couldn't be that you're a racist pig too, could it? Huh? You think? Maybe, possibly. Reached for comment by CNN today. The brave, bold, curly haired little prick, Rand Paul's employees, said they had no comment. Representative Omar's office did not respond immediately today to CNN's request for comment, but earlier this week, Omar shared a tweet about the remarks by a columnist who said the Congresswoman, quote, has visited Somalia more than Rand Paul has and knows far more about it. Rand Paul doesn't know shit about anything. Rand Paul is the one, you remember, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? Cast a no vote. All it took was one. A no vote to continue aid to the 9/11 people who saved lives and the family members who lost loved ones who were trying to save lives. Rand Paul said, no, fuck them, no more money for them. Until somebody got to him and said, are you crazy? But Rand Paul is a classic example of white abuse, white man abuse. He's protected by his white skin and his curly hair and his position in the Senate. And so the little bastard, just like Donald Trump, can say anything he wants to. No matter how gross, no matter how disgusting, no matter how condescending, no matter how patronizing, as long as he says it about people of color. In a separate tweet shared by Ilhan Omar, actor Tom Arnold, a solid lefty, mocked a 2017 assault on Rand Paul by his neighbor, Renee Boucher. The attack, which occurred at his home in Bowling Green, Kentucky, left Rand Paul with 6 broken ribs and bruised lungs and resulted in Rand Paul being awarded more than $500,000 in damages in a lawsuit against Boucher. So everything that these racist pigs in the American government, I realize we've had racists before. We have racists now. We'll have racists in the future. But I don't think since Woodrow Wilson we've had a more openly racist pig than Donald Trump and his little clutch of hangers-on like Rand Paul. But the comments from Trump touched off the reaction in Washington. A lot of newspapers call it a firestorm. And it caused the House to pass a resolution condemning the racist language by the prick in the White House. Can you imagine if the Republicans controlled the House? They would pass a resolution praising Trump for his racist remarks and adding in their praise, anyone who says these are racist has got to be a lefty communist, Castro-loving freak, hippie, beatnik, whatever words they use now. So the resolution was supported by the 4 GOP House members who Trump has attacked. And a lot of congressional Republicans came to Trump's defense. No surprise there. This is why the Republicans will never, ever, the American Fascist Party, I should say, God damn it, Malloy, call it what it is.